Hello, Miranda. Do you need anything?
Hello, I think I'm good.
Okay, excellent. And your computer rebooted, so there's that.
Yeah, luckily it did it in time to start the class.
It's annoying.
Okay, just testing that you can still hear me with my headphones.
Mhm.
Great. Should I go ahead and open the, or admit everyone?
Yeah, you can let people in, absolutely.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to wait a minute or so to give everyone time to log in. Good morning.
Good morning.
So hopefully everyone has a GPT or OpenAI API key. You will need that today, so go ahead and sign up for that right now if you haven't already. But I think most of us should already have it.
And would you want to take some time after you get started in a breakout room, or however you'd like to do it? I can show people how to get to their API key.
Yeah, that would be great.
Great. Let me know whenever you would like to have that. There's someone from MTSU, Isaac Shirk. Any relation?
Wonder who that could be. He might be sitting right next to me. For anyone unaware, Isaac is my husband. And this whole time he has been sitting next to me while we do AI Summer, which has made coordinating microphones a little difficult. Okay, well, we're 2 minutes past 9, and I suppose we can go ahead and get started if everyone's ready. All right, well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this Tuesday, a little bit different, but happy to see everyone. Today, we will be talking about LangChain, which I'm really excited about because it's how we can actually apply a lot of these AI tools that we've been learning about. And a lot of your questions throughout this whole AI summer have really been aimed at what you can do with the models, and we will cover a lot of that this week. So this week it is me, Miranda, and Umang talking about LangChain. So Umang, did you want to say anything before we get started?
No, I will not be teaching today, but I will be teaching tomorrow and possibly a little bit of Friday. So looking forward to all of that content.
Yeah, awesome. So good morning, everyone. And if you would, go ahead and navigate to our GitHub repo. I've put that link in the chat for you. And as always, put your research group name or working group name in front of your Zoom name so that we can assign you to the correct breakout rooms for today. We're going to go to this repo. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let me get that started. So if you navigate to our AI Summer repo, hopefully you're all seeing this right now, we're going to be working out of this notebook right here at the bottom. So just like what Charo was doing last week, if you click on this, and then you can click on this Open in Colab button, and that will take you right to the notebook we're going to be using. So now I've switched to my notebook. Can someone give me a thumbs up if you can see my notebook instead of the GitHub repo? Okay, awesome, just making sure. So I'll give everyone a couple seconds to navigate here. And then we can go ahead and get started. So while you're doing that, I'll kind of give an overview of what LangChain is. LangChain is a Python library that allows us to connect to all of these AI models that we've been learning about so far. It includes OpenAI, it includes models on Hugging Face, a lot of these models that we can access ourselves, but this time we're able to access them through code, and it provides a wrapper around all of the different APIs for accessing all of the different models. So instead of having to learn OpenAI's models and Hugging Face's models, you're able to kind of wrap around that with LangChain and just use the same workflow to access all of those models and use them. So LangChain is really great for building solutions, experimenting with the different models that you want to use. And it's really fun. So I hope you enjoy getting started with this. So go ahead and run this notebook. This one, oh, if it warns you about it, it's okay. I wrote it. I didn't put anything weird in there. Go ahead and click on the run for these pip installs. These are just all of the packages that we'll need today. And then also all of these import libraries, which you have seen last week. I'm getting all the libraries that we need. And then the final one that might look a little weird to you is this OpenAI API key. I'm using GitPass, which is a Python library that lets you enter a password onto a Jupyter notebook. And so this should, when it runs, pop up with a little thing where you can enter your API key, and that way I'm not sharing anyone's key or you're not saving it. So let me know if you have trouble with that, or if you need help getting an API key. We can open a breakout room real quick to make sure you have that. So you will need your OpenAI API key, and you'll enter it right here. You'll see me do that in a bit. See, so I have mine saved to a password manager. Okay. So while I'm waiting for that to run, the examples that we're going to be going over today are from LangChain's Quick Start Guide. And you can find the link to that up here at the very top if you want to click on that and kind of see how my examples differ from theirs, or if you just want to save it to read later. And my notebook right now is just running through all the libraries to get started. So the main idea behind LangChain is that we're going to form these chains to connect models, the prompts that you send to the models, and then the tasks that you wanted to do. So that is the chain in LangChain. So here, GitPass is prompting me with this little box to enter my API key. I'm going to paste it in there and press enter. And if this is giving you trouble, then what you can do is just change this to your actual API key and just get rid of this line. So go ahead and give me a thumbs up or a check or something if you have gotten to this part and entered your Open API key.
So if you want to give a green check if you're at that point where you have your API key in, and a red X if you do not.
And please do, if you're having issues with this for whatever reason, put in the chat and hopefully someone can get to you and help you out.
And Miranda, it looks like we have about 3
Yes.
folks that
Okay.
might have some trouble. It looks like they're still downloading doing the installs. So
okay. All right, I'll wait. Yeah, I'll pause right here then and give you some time. So let me go ahead and get that link again. We are going to our AI Summer repo. I'm going to copy that link. You're going to click on this right here, and then select Open in Colab. And then this will open a Google Colab for you so that we can all run. And you want to run these first 3 cells here until we get up to here for get predictions from language model. So I'm putting the link to the repo in the chat. Yeah, please do continue putting a green check once you get that, or a red X if you're not there yet, so that I don't get ahead of myself and get too excited. I'm seeing more green checks so far. That's good. That's good.
And also,
And if you are having issues.
I was going to point out there's a question that you might know about from Audrey. She's getting an error. You'll see that in the chat about PIP's dependency resolver.
PIP's dependency resolver. It's not currently due.
Oh, it was a William that was actually having that error.
So downloading PIP things.
And we have a question about the API key. And would you want to show where to get the API key from, Miranda, or I can, whichever you would prefer?
I don't have that quite ready to go. So if you already have it, feel free to share it. Or I'm not sure what those pip install errors are.
Yeah, Miranda, you seem to have it too right at the bottom of this, but I think we can ignore it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, I see. No, it should not affect the, I thought you meant like it wasn't running because of that. Yeah, no, this is fine. So it seems like it's so it says Google Colab requires requests equals 2.27, but you have 2.31. We're not going to be using the requests library, so that's totally fine. And then if you did have this, I'm pretty sure you could say pip install requests equal 2.27 or something. But don't worry about that if you get that. Thank you, Umang, for pointing that out. Okay, yeah, so don't worry about the error. It should still run. And then someone's even said running it again didn't have an error, so. Okay, and then some people are asking, how do we get an open API key? OpenAI API key. You can click on this link right here, and it should see open link in new tab. And this is OpenAI's website, and you should be able to sign up and then get an API key there. So Jesse, should we pause or put people in a breakout room if they need to sign up for that? What do you think?
Well, let's see. I will show everyone just because I think that we might have. Could people give me a red X if they do not yet have the API key? Go ahead and click on the red X. Be sure to click on the red X if you don't have an API key yet. If you need to see how to go and get that API key, and the red X is going to be under reactions, and it's going to be that red. It's going to be a red circle with a white X in the middle. Okay. Then yes, I'd say let's go ahead and. Umang, could you create a quick breakout room just for those with the red X, and I will go into a room and help them out.
I open up the rooms. You should be able to join it. It's room 20 called API help. Okay.
Room 20 API help. I see it. Okay, I'm going to hop in there right now. Come and join me in API help. And Miranda, if you can, we'll be done as quick as we can.
Okay, sounds good. And Umang, it looks like some people like just jumped into a breakout room because they saw that they opened.
Yeah, I will pull them back out.
Okay, yeah, no, we're not going into breakout rooms for general purpose. We're going into a breakout room if you are not certain how to access your OpenAI API key. Okay, so they're going to take just a second. And then hopefully they will be back soon. Umang, should we just continue?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay, so if you're here and you're not in that breakout room, I'm assuming it's because you were able to run this cell and add your OpenAI API key. If that's not the case, please do put that in the chat and we will help you out. But first of all, let's talk about LangChain and what it is. So I mentioned it is a Python library that wraps around all of these AI models we've been talking about this summer and allows you to access them using one kind of workflow. Now, there are main components of LangChain that we'll be learning about and how to connect to those and use those. And the main ones that we'll have are the model that you use, the prompt that you send the model, and then the chain. And so the first two should be pretty familiar to you. You know about models right now, you know how to choose your model. You know, you go to ChatGPT. You know the prompt, we talked about prompt engineering and how to do that. And then the new thing for us today is the chain, which is basically the workflow that you'll be able to use to access the model and get it to do something that you want. So we'll go through all of those components plus a little bit. So first, let's just start with a simpler example. LangChain has a bunch of available models, and you can choose whichever one that is best for your application. In this case, we're going to use the OpenAI model just because we've been talking about that all month, and most of us have the API key for that already. So if you run this cell, it should instantiate or start up your model. So first of all, let's just look at this code, pretend like you can't see that output there. What we have here is a code cell that says LLM equals OpenAI. And if you go up here, you can see we imported that. So it says from langchain.llms import OpenAI. So we've imported some sort of thing that's called OpenAI. I wonder what it could be. And we've named a variable after it. Next, we have some text that I typed in earlier. It says, what would be a good company name for a company that makes colorful socks? Looks an awful like something I would send to ChatGPT. And then we have this print statement. So what are we thinking that this will do? Go ahead and think about that in your head. Intuitively, from what you learned last week with Charo, what are we thinking that this will do? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and run it. We have our LLM, and then we have this. And so it looks like we have sent this prompt to our model, and it's just as easy as that. And then we've printed this result. So you call your LLM, your large language model, put in your prompt as an argument to that model, and then it prints out this answer when you print it. Socktastic. I love that. That makes me happy. Yes.
Miranda, it seems like people are running into a rate limit error, interestingly.
Oh. Rate limit error, you exceeded your current quota. Oh, so that is, you are most likely on the free trial. And if you're hitting a rate limit error and it says, please check your plan and billing, that means that you are past your free trial and you have to set up like a credit card or something, I think.
Yeah, Miranda, this happened to me exactly, because basically I signed up for my free trial, but then I didn't use the API for a while. And so it fully expired, and then I wanted to start messing with the API and I had already passed the time. So I never really got to use the free part of the API. So I was just gonna say, you're exactly right. That's what I had to do. You have to go like sign up. It's actually pretty inexpensive, but you do have to kind of go sign up and give them a credit card.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a huge bummer. I'm sorry, y'all.
Yeah, it's actually very cheap.
Yeah, it is really cheap. It's like, you know, I think pennies or something per
I only used 12 cents in the entire April, so they probably don't even send me the invoice.
Yeah, so if you want to go ahead and set that up, maybe join the breakout room with Jesse.
Yeah, I should put the credit card in. It's okay. And you can set a limit, you know, to, let's say I set a limit for $5, so that just in case, you know, I run a runaway program, you know,
right,
you know, then you will feel very safe, I think.
Yeah. So so for now, if you need help, go to breakout room 20 with Jesse Spencer-Smith, and he can probably help you with that. But for now, if you want, you can follow along, and hopefully when we're in breakout groups, you will be with someone that has a working key. And if not, we will try to figure this out. Really sorry about that. I was not expecting everyone to have already exceeded rate limits, so we'll see. Yes, Michael.
I guess a good question is that when you have that OpenAI, that function call, what does that, what actually it does actually?
Yes, so that's a great question. So LangChain has a list of available models, and if we click on this link here that's in the collab, you can go here and see all of the models that they have. So large language models, general models, and they also have ones called chat models, which are pretty much the same thing, but more for like a chat interface like ChatGPT. And so if we click on these LLMs, they give us a list of all of the ones that it wants us to do getting started. So when we call OpenAI, we're calling basically ChatGPT, that model. you can add in, like model name and stuff, but you don't need to worry about these. We're not going to talk about like what arguments you can give it or parameters you can give it just yet. But you call LLM equals, for now, we're just going to do OpenAI, and that will start up OpenAI's ChatGPT 3.5, I believe, is the default for that. So yeah, great question. So whenever you want to start up the model for today, we're just going to be using OpenAI. So we're going to do LLM equals OpenAI. And then to send your prompt, you're going to just send it a string. So I have text, assign that to a string, and then print LLM, send it the text. So we'll kind of get a feel for this. I just want to show you some examples for now. And then we can dive into how exactly it works. So we had this prompt here. Well, are there any other questions? Because definitely raise your hands if you have questions. But I'll just keep going with the prompts. So we can see these prompts, but if you want to, when we interact with ChatGPT, we kind of have a chance to just type in a prompt, type in another prompt, and it's really quick. That's a little bit harder when you're programming because you don't want to have to, run things all over again, type things all of the time. So LangChain has these prompt templates that allow you to format your prompt. So we can do this by calling the prompt template class, and then you can give it your input variables. Oops. And then kind of a template. And so the template is basically just a way where you can put a placeholder for your input variables. So curly brackets will be your placeholders here. If you want to read more about prompt templates, you can look this up with that link. I'm also following their quick start guide, which is kind of just, I know I'm not explaining a ton right now, but the quick start guide is kind of just to show you the code that works and then let you experiment around with it. So we have this prompt template here. And in this case, instead of just saying what would be a good company name for a company that makes colorful socks, we have prompt template, input variable is product, and then our template is what is a good name for a company that makes curly brackets product. So in this case, we can use that to experiment over a wide variety of products that we may want. And you can see how you can format this to be, some sort of different prompt that you'd like. So in this case, I'm making a new prompt, and you can use this .format method. So you get your prompt up here, say .format, and then you can set what this input variable is. So here I've put, instead of the product being socks, I put the product as modern clothing. So if I run this, and now I run this new prompt, it will print that for me with this print statement. What is a good name for a company that makes modern clothing? If I want, something else, I can type delicious food. And now our prompt has changed to be, what is a good name for a company that makes delicious food? So I'm going to print that. We're going to send that new prompt. And it says taste buds treats. That's pretty good. I'm liking these suggestions. So are there any questions on prompt templates so far? And we're going to keep going. So don't worry if you don't 100% understand it. But if you do want more details, you can look at their prompt templates and exactly how they're all used.
Miranda, I have a question.
Yes.
Hi. So I'm wondering, could you have multiple parts of your template in the curly brackets? Like, could you say what is a good, curly bracket name to have multiple inputs?
Yes, that's a really good question. So you can have, so this input variables right here is a list. So you can just add, let's say we want another one. So instead of, I'm just going to call it variable because that's boring, but instead of name, maybe I wanted slogan or logo. Well, logo wouldn't really be good, but so you can add in as many as you want. All you do is you put this input variables list, you put another comma after it, and then give your other one. But do make sure that it matches up with the name that you give it in the curly brackets. But yeah, that's a great question. So if I do this now with input variables, product, and variable, and it doesn't have to be in a particular order. At least for me, it hasn't. Let's see, slogan instead of name. Oh, product equals slogan. Let's see, variable equals slogan. I misspoke there, sorry. And now if we play this, what is a good slogan for a company that makes delicious food? And then if we use this cell to send it to the model, let's see what it says. paste the difference. How delightful. So yeah, that's a great question. Any other questions about prompt templates? All right, so now we'll get to the chain part of LangChain, and then this will
I'm sorry to
help
interrupt, but
solidify everything together.
I had a question about, I put it in the chat, but I wasn't really sure what is happening in the hidden part that we ran before the manage prompts for LLM. The get predictions from language model, like what exactly is hidden there?
Yeah, so LangChain is just a giant wrapper around sending a prompt to a model and then getting the response back. So we start up our model right here, LLM equals OpenAI. That's what LangChain calls the OpenAI GPT model. Then we have our text and we send it to our model by calling our LLM and putting in parentheses our prompt. So that's just in a basic way. LangChain is just calling the OpenAI API for you, sending your API key, sending your prompt, sending what model you want, which this one is just the default model, which I believe is GPT 3.5, and then bringing us back when we print it, the reply or the response from that. Does that make sense?
I'm asking about right before that. Yeah, the get predictions from language model. What is that?
Oh, that's just the header for this section. So there's nothing like there. It's just the header. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because when you click the drop down on get predictions from language model, like if you click that, it says 3 cells hidden. So I wasn't sure.
That's just how Colab works. So if you notice, it's hiding these cells that are under the header. So if you want to like shorten the notebook that you're looking at, you can just click on it and it will see. So it says choose your model. So that's what's in there. Yeah, so there's nothing hidden. I'm not hiding anything from you. Awesome. So now we've looked at prompts. We've looked at prompt engineering. Prompt templates. Yes, Marcus.
Yeah, so I put the same prompt into the regular OpenAI API and obviously this one, and the results were different. Do we know what like attributes LangChain is using when it calls the OpenAI API, makes the API call to OpenAI?
Yeah, so I kind of glossed over that. If you look at their API reference, let's see, for their models, I think I had it open. No. So yeah, if you look at their models, you can kind of see, let's see, LLMs, integrations, I think is where they have. So this is the list of all of their models, right? And if you click on these, so here's OpenAI. So I'm just on the models page, it's linked in the Colab notebook. You can click on OpenAI and it will show you what it's doing here. And so this is just kind of, like what I was showing, it just calls it in a basic way, but then somewhere around here, there is Zoom is preventing me from seeing my entire screen. But somewhere around here, there is like an API reference, and you can look at that. Let's see. If you go down to the API reference, that's where it'll give you like the code for what exactly it's doing, if you want to see that and see like its default. Did that help?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and just chiming in real quick, just to kind of put it out there, the part of the reason why your output was different is because there's this temperature parameter that controls the flexibility on how creative these models can be. So you can pass in a temperature parameter by default. I think it's like 0.5, but you can set it to 0 so that you kind of get you don't get creative answers, you get precise answers. So that's a way to control the behavior of these models. And we'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow.
Yeah. So tomorrow we'll get into like actually what all of this code does and how you can customize it. Today is just an overview so you can recognize the parts of LangChain that you'll be seeing this week. And so what Umang was just saying is the temperature equals 0.9 is or something is just a parameter that you can pass. We're not going to worry about that right now, but that is going to result in you getting, you know, more creative or random results. Jesse, I see you're back. Are we all okay?
Almost. I'm going to hop back in there to help some folks out again. Somebody just asked to go back in. I think that you can probably continue. One thing that I'll put in here also is the previous question sort of also reveals something that's different about these models, which is these are AI models. This is not software the way that we're normally thinking about it, right? When you write software and you send something to an API, you know, when you send something to another service, you expect to get always exactly the same thing back, depending if you start with the same conditions. Not so here. It depends on you know, part of it is random on purpose. And so it's going to be important to remember that the models are constantly shifting. So you have to, if you're a programmer and you're used to working with APIs, you're going to have to shift your mindset just a little bit. I'll go hop in the room and see if I can help out folks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so you will be getting, you know, different answers depending on your parameters and everything. Okay, so I know we're moving a bit fast, but let's go ahead to chains, because that's the exciting part of LangChain, is these chains. And these are basically, you can think of them as workflows. They allow you to combine different models, different prompts, experiment with different models, using all of the same workflow. And so the base chain is just called LLM chain. As always, you can click on this link to read more about chains and how you can customize them. But for now, you just start your chain by having a variable assigned to LLM chain. And inside this LLM chain class, we're going to give it our model, which we had already started up as OpenAI, and then our prompt. And that's for your prompt template. This is the prompt template that we constructed up here. So I'm going to get rid of this extra stuff that I added just so that the rest of the notebook runs as I wanted. Okay, rerun my prompt template so that it's just with this product. And so we're going to start up this chain by calling LLM chain, giving it our model and our prompt. And then to use this chain, we can just say chain.run. The method to run your chain or send something to the chain will be different depending on the chain, which is frustrating. The base one that we're using is LLM chain. This one, you can use .run to run your prompt. Other chains, because LangChain is open source, people can create their own chains and then put those in the documentation and as part of the library. And so they're not really standardized right now. LangChain is super new. If you didn't know, it's being created as we speak. It's updating all the time. So sometimes these methods won't really be consistent in what they're called. So I'm just letting you know so that if you go to the documentation and there's another chain, and instead of chain.run, it's like chain.predict, that would be why. But anyway, for this one, we're going to say chain.run, put in colorful socks again, and now it says Kaleido socks. And chain.run will automatically print it for us. So it's very nice. We can even run it again and get a different answer. Cheery socks. Beautiful. So that is just a basic of using a chain. So you can see here how you might want to use that is by providing it a different model. So if you have a model on Hugging Face that you want to use, if you have, you know, whatever API you want, you can put in that model and then also change around your prompt template. Maybe you can make your prompt template much more customizable, like we did earlier by adding more input variables, changing your prompts around. Another really cool thing that you can do is send a list of inputs to the model. So in this next cell, we make a list of, more curly brackets. This is a list of dictionaries, I suppose. And so you put curly brackets in quotes, the variable that you want to format, and then the actual string that you want to put in there. So if we go back up to our prompt. We go back up to our prompt template. And it says, what is a good name for a company that makes product? Now we can go down here and say, I want you to iterate through these, where first you replace product with socks, then with computer, and then with shoes. And we've made this list, and now we can use chain.apply, not chain.run, chain.apply to apply a list of inputs to the model. So if I run this, now it will go through and call that model for each of those. So it'll say Socktopia for socks. and Tech Forge Solutions for computers, and Footwear Factory for shoes. And like Jesse was saying earlier, your answers will probably be different because every time we run this, it's running through the language model again and coming up Soctopus. That's my favorite one I've seen so far, Soctopus. So anyway, you'll get different predictions each time, and then you can kind of see which ones you like. So we're going to go into a breakout exercise, but before we do, I want to pause for questions. And I see Kay, you have a question?
Yeah, if you did have two parameters like product and something else like you had before, can you still do chain.run with that?
Yes, you can. So you would say, so let's try that right now. We could say, so before we had, I just had a boring one like variable, and then I'm going to put in curly brackets, variable. I'm going to run this again. Now, if we want chain prompt, let's say, what did we call this? Product equal colorful socks. You may have to send it with input. And if this doesn't work right off the bat, then we can dive into the documentation, but variable equals slogan. Yeah. Wait. That didn't exactly work. I think you have to wrap it in something like input variables equals or something like that. But I will make sure that I know for sure and get back to you on that. A little more advanced. Any other questions? Yes, Michael.
I guess, I may be a little bit get the cart in front of the horse a little bit because you have a lot of content to teach this week and next. But I thought, on my mind, when I get into this, I thought that chain is a chain of models, right? For example, I can go, the first model I want to run, the whisper to get the voice to the text, and then feed the text to the large language model, and then do the stuff. It's not that
so
I understand the chain.
So, okay, yeah. So the chain is basically just a workflow. And so you can use chains to connect models. So you'll start up a chain with a specific model. And then let's say you wanted some other chain. And then you can say LLM chain with, a different LLM that maybe you have defined earlier. But the chains are workflows that make it easier to use different models. So it's not just for using different models and sending it to different models. It's also for doing different tasks. So there's different kinds of chains. There's like chatbot chain, conversation chain. There's question answering over documents chain. There is question answering over databases chain. And so you have all of these workflows that allow you to just kind of run them in sequence to do a bunch of different tasks. So if your task is super complicated and you need to, let's say, ask a user for a prompt and then put that prompt over a database and then return that response in some specific format, you can use all of these chains and link those chains together to get that output. So yes, you can modify this to be different models. And then you could even, have the same chain, but with a different model and send the same prompt or something like that. But it's not necessarily chaining models together. It's kind of chaining entire workflows together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, yes or no. I guess maybe
okay.
I can dig I guess what I was expecting, the chain, when I look at the parameters that input, it should have, because you like you said, right, it's a workflow. So you probably have that steps somewhere defined in the chain. I guess I was just trying to figure out where that steps. Let's say if I want to do 5 steps for a workflow, where that 5 steps is, is reflected, right? Is in that LM chain object, or is that I have to code around it? That's really what.
Okay, yes. So if you go and read up about chains, it'll kind of answer a lot of those questions for you. You can customize chains a lot, and I have more down here for different kinds of chains. But most of the workflow is just wrapped up in that chain. Okay. And so LLM chain is just a very basic one, but you can get pretty complicated with it pretty fast. And that just is different chains depending on what you want
got
to
it.
do.
You answered the question. So LM chain
Okay.
is one type of chain. There could be
Right.
some other object like a chat box chain, search chain, so on.
Exactly.
I got it. Okay.
Yes, exactly. So right now, yeah, we're just using this basic one that is just calling a model and sending it a prompt. But chains can be very customizable. You can even make your own if you want. So
I can also chain the chain, I guess, right?
Yeah, you can chain the chain, exactly. So
Right.
I even have a breakout exercise later where you could just look at all of the chains that they have. So for now, we have this breakout exercise for messing around with the prompt template. So in this breakout exercise, I want you to change the prompt template to reflect a different question that maybe you would want to ask a model. Just use LLM chain. Don't try to experiment around with other ones because you may run into errors. And then if you have time, use the list of inputs and use the apply method to apply that to your model. And I also have some example questions if you're having trouble thinking of some other questions to send the model. And so we'll go ahead and send you to those breakout rooms now. And please use the collab book if you want to code around. So, and then record your answers in our breakout document.
All right, the breakout rooms are open, so you should be able to choose to join the breakout room that you've been assigned to.
Okay, awesome. And hopefully you'll have someone there with a working OpenAI key.
Sorry, where do we see our room assignments?
Are you, hold on, give me 1 second.
I'm having trouble too.
Here, let me do this real quick.
It might have gotten confused because we opened one earlier.
Yeah.
Sorry, are we getting put back to the main room?
Breakout rooms was having difficulties, I think because we opened the help breakout room earlier. So Umang is just working on making sure everyone's assigned to a room, but we are going to breakout rooms. We're just making sure you're in the right one.
Got it.
Technical difficulties.
This week we will have class Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, but not Thursday. Is that correct?
This week, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, so this week we had an extra session yesterday.
Right.
And then it's Tuesday today, Wednesday tomorrow, and Friday.
Oh, just want to make sure. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, sorry about that. Zoom quit on me, but I am back and I'll open all the rooms now.
And if you need some extra help, you can come into API help.
Thank you, Jesse. Hello, everyone. So I think we're all slowly coming back. I think we've got everyone back now. So hopefully you were able to get the code running and you had someone that had a working API key. Does anyone want to share the prompt template that they used, or maybe any insights that they had from their group? Any observations? Did it work? Did it not work? Let's see, I'm gonna snoop on this document. Oh yes, someone.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can share what I did. Can we just share my screen, or is that best?
Sure, whatever you'd like.
So everything I did is just highlighted right here. So I did the thing that you were messing around with before of trying to do two different things. So one of the things that I've heard that I think is right, especially with creative uses of ChatGPT, is that it's good to get multiple examples because sometimes the first one's not great. So I said, please generate number of good slogans for a company that makes something. And then I created these little dictionaries. I wanted to change them up to get some new things. So I got hockey sticks, headphones, and coffee mugs. And then I wanted it to generate 5 slogans, 6 slogans, and 7 slogans, just so I could see it iterating, and it worked. So, and you were right, Miranda, that using apply is the way you need to do it. Well, maybe run would work, but apply does work if you want to use more than one.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm teaching LangChain this week, but like we said, it's open source and not super organized. So I'm trying my best to keep up with all this documentation, but
right.
Yeah,
sometimes
that's
it's just
awesome.
experimentation, but so just like this code runs. So
Yeah. That's really great. I love the putting the number of slogans in there because it's kind of like running it several times, but you only have to do it once. That's really clever.
Right. Yeah. And you can even do this for like the little personal tutor thing, right? Can you explain this concept to me in 3 different ways? Like I've seen that one
right.
also, because sometimes one explanation won't work really well.
Yeah, I really love this. Thank you.
And by the way, another question we had, I don't know, you may not know, because as we just discussed, everything's really open source. But in our group, one of the questions that came up was, is there an easy way to generate like a Cartesian join of these inputs to generate a whole lot of prompts, right? So let's say you had 2 variables, but you wanted to develop an m times n prompts. My suggestion, which was really kludgy, was to just use like nested for loops to generate a list of dictionaries. Is there a better way to do that? Are you aware of that? Or
I'm not aware of a better way to do that than what you just said.
Okay.
Umang's nodding too. So yeah, if you want to, have a matrix of all of these responses or develop, different combinations of all of these, I think the best way at this point is to use a loop and loop through all of those. But hopefully maybe they'll add a feature like that sometime.
Yeah. And Adam has a suggestion in there too. And there are others, I'm aware of a number of sort of Pythonic tricks so you can kind of do that. The only thing you might want to keep in mind if you're doing something, especially Cartesian, is you only have so many tokens and it all costs tokens.
Right.
So you just want to be sure that you're really interested in all of those intersections.
Right. Anat, did you want to share?
I think Professor Blocker's was a lot cooler than mine. I just did the regular example question, but I did have a question as to how we could get rid of the new lines that precede every output.
Yeah, so that's another thing where it's like someone did that and it's kind of inconsistent when it has new lines and when it doesn't. I think if you put print, if you wrap everything in print, I think it gets rid of the new lines, but that could just be wrong. That may just be what the chain puts out. And in that case, we could format our string afterwards, kind of like a post process of getting that's more Python-y, not exactly LangChain, where you could just strip the new lines off of that. But that might just be something it does, but try printing it instead of just do chain.run, do like print chain.run. Maybe that'll help, but that's just another thing that I'm not really, they just added that. It's just a thing in there.
It works for chain.run, but it doesn't work for chain.apply.
Yeah, that's kind of, we get these things when we're working with software that is one, open source, and two, moving very quickly. So you guys are right on the cutting edge. Congrats. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and share my screen again if there's no, and please raise your hand if you have questions or put them in the chat and we can try to help you out. Oops, that's not it. Let me share the correct screen. All right, so that's really cool. I'm really glad to see that you were able to get the prompt templates working. Now we're going to kind of look into, let's see where we're. Sorry, I hope I'm not hurting anyone's eyes by scrolling too much. Okay, so we've looked at some of these prompt templates. I hope that worked for you. We're going to talk more in depth about prompt templates tomorrow. We're actually going to talk more in depth about all of this code tomorrow. So don't worry if you're not really understanding what's happening, underneath all of these wrapper functions. LangChain has a ton of things that just do stuff and kind of hides it all from you. So if you just want code that runs, that's great. If you want to understand it, you're going to have to kind of get more into the documentation, which we will cover more this week. Today's kind of an overview. So I did want to touch briefly on, we used the LLM chain, which is just general large language model chain. There's another chain. There's several other chains. One of them is the conversation chain that in its source code has built-in memory. So it will remember your past prompts that you've sent to it. And so it's kind of like your own ChatGPT in that sense, where you can chat with it and it will actually keep a log of everything that you've sent it and everything it has sent you. So let's look at this real quick, but I don't want to spend too much time on this because the notebook's a bit long. So we may bleed out into tomorrow, but that's okay. So you can just see it. This is just an example of using another chain. So you call it, it's conversation chain, kind of the same. You give it LLM. This little verbose equals true is just an argument you can give to this specific chain. Don't worry about it too much. It just means it's going to tell you everything that it's doing. And see, notice in this one, it is conversation chain .predict. It's not .run. So that, like I said, it's just one of those things. You just have to look at the documentation here. Conversation.predict, and then you put in your input. So the input I put in is hi there, and it's going to be a chat bot. And so here you can kind of see under the hood, it tells you the prompt that this chain automatically supplies. And it says the following is a friendly conversation between a human and an AI. The AI is talkative and provides lots of specific details from its context. If the AI does not know the answer to a question, and my Zoom is cutting this, it truthfully says it does not know. How nice. So that's an example of how these chains can really be customized. And this is just in the source code of this chain specifically. And Michael, did you have a question? I saw you hand up in the
no, sorry, I kind of answered myself.
Okay.
Looks like that the prompt after the formatting, that's something that we can define, or that is a hard coded in the chain.
So this one is hard coded into this chain, but you can make your own chains and define that. So this conversation chain was made specifically for this purpose of having a friendly conversation between a human and an AI. But if you look at the API reference for this chain, how they built that was just putting this into their chain. So I'll show you that documentation.
Okay.
Below, I have links to how you can make your own chain as well. So anyway, now it has the human input is hi there, and then the AI at the very bottom, it takes all of this in and then it says, hi, how can I help you? And this is kind of funny because last time it says, hello, what is your name? And that's why I said my name is Miranda. But now it doesn't make sense. So now it says, hello, how can I help you? And now I'm just going to tell it my name, I guess. And it says, nice to meet you, Miranda. What can I do for you today? And so you can kind of have a conversation. It's kind of creepy that it knows my name because I gave it to it. But then you can see it keeps a log of this conversation and sends that in for future prompts so that it is able to remember your chat from earlier. So that's pretty useful if you want more of a chat model that remembers what the conversation has been about so far. Do note that this does take up your context length. It does take up tokens. So it's kind of, I think it tries to make the memory a bit more streamlined, but it is still taking up your token length there. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that because I want to kind of talk about some other things, but you can get really particular with chains. We'll talk about this, don't worry. But there's a ton of different chains for a ton of different tasks. You can read over the list here, but like I said, there's ones for answering questions over databases, answering questions over documents, answering conversational questions. There's more conversation chains, and then you can even make your own custom chain. They give you the code to do that, where you can define your chain as a class and then say, this is the base prompt that this chain is just automatically populated with, kind of like you are a friendly AI that's talking to a human. You can give it something like that. You can really customize this as much as you want. So we're not going to be getting too far into the weeds on that because I do want to make sure you get a complete overview of LangChain before we kind of dive into the solutions that we're going to go through later this week. So I'm going to kind of skip over this one. So this was a breakout exercise, but maybe we can just discuss as a group right now. So there's a bunch of chains. If you click on this link here, you can see all of the different chains that they have. And I'm kind of curious, does anyone see any from this list that they think would be interesting for their own applications or their own group? Just go ahead and put it in the chat or raise your hand. Just as a group here, not in breakout groups, just as a class, kind of talk about, what chains do you see that are particularly interesting to you? Yeah, SQL database chain. That's a really good one. I think that's neat. You can, I think you can use that one for asking questions and then also querying a database, which is really cool that you could query a database with natural language instead of using SQL. Someone says, what is graph cipher QA chain? Good question. I would have to read the documentation on that. That's a very custom chain. I think that's over a graph database, but I could be wrong. Analyze document, retrieval, question and answer with sources. Yeah, these are all really cool. I really like looking over the retrieval QA or the analyzing documents. I feel like that's really applicable to especially academic research. If you have, all of these documents that you want to ask questions over, we have a lot of projects going on related to that. So there's some really neat ones. And if you are the kind of person that wants to know exactly how all of the code works, you can read about these. This is kind of the how-to guide stuff, but then you can also look at, more of the source code. But I mean, we've even got API chains for just interacting with general APIs. There's a lot of chains here. So you can see how we could really get super detailed with this. All right. So next we're going to talk about agents to call your chains. Now this is kind of getting into the meta-ness of this, where instead of you calling the chains and deciding what chains to call, we can start up an agent, which is kind of just an autonomous model that is able to make decisions based on the tools that you give it. So if you've heard of AutoGPT, where we have GPT that is given, plugins or tools, and it's able to access the internet and look up information to answer questions or access, Wolfram Alpha. It's kind of like this, but in LangChain. So in this case, agents are able to call chains, they say dynamically, because it calls the chains based on what it thinks it needs to do. And then this is following the React framework, which is a way for models to output to input a question or a prompt and then kind of think about it, but it's a model, so it's not really thinking, but it gives the steps that it thinks it needs to follow to accomplish a task. So these are called agents. So in this example, we're gonna combine an agent and give it the tools for the search engine DuckDuckGo and a math tool, because we have talked about how LLMs are bad at doing math. But if we give it a calculator, then it can do math. So in this case, we're going to give it a calculator. So this down here, first you choose your tools. I already told you the tools we're going to give it. You choose the tools, it will only use those tools. So if you do not give it a tool that it needs, it won't even know that it could use it. So you can see a list of available tools in this link here. I'm going to click on that and you can see, I mean, there's so many tools. The main example that they give on their getting started guide is this Google SERP API, which is Google searching, but you needed another API key for that one. So I chose DuckDuckGo because it's anonymous and you didn't need to set anything up for that. But so if we just do this, so how you get your tools is you say load tools and then the name of these tools. So the name of the DuckDuckGo tool is DDG-search and the name of the math tool is LLM-math. You can find the names of these tools mostly by going to this and clicking on it. So let's look for the LLM if it's listed. It may not even be listed. Okay, let's look at Bing. And so it'll tell you how to implement it, but just full transparency for you right now. Like I said, the documentation of LangChain is lacking, always changing, completely open source. People are always working on it. You can't always find the name of these tools, which is very frustrating. So LLM math is one that they give. They tell you what the name of it is. DDG search. This was just me trying to figure out how they might have named a tool that uses DuckDuckGo. And it happened to be DDG-search. So some of this is a bit opaque, not super intuitive, but you use this load tools function, give it a list of the tools that you want it to use, and then also send it your model. So kind of brushing over this, but we'll see how it works in a bit. So then you initialize your agent. This is another wrapper where it does a lot of stuff that we're not going to talk about right now, but we're going to call this initialize agent function. What it needs is your tools, the model, and then the agent type. I have linked agent types up here to the documentation. There's several different types of agents that make decisions based on different frameworks. Just a base one is just agent type zero-shot React description. There's a paper on this if you want to read it. I'm not going to go into that paper right now, but just know that this is the agent we're choosing. This agent is going to decide, this specific one, zero-shot reaction, decides which tools to use based on the tool's built-in descriptions. So in the source code, there are built-in descriptions for each tool. If you make a custom tool, you will have a field that says description. If you fill that in, your agent for this one, zero-shot React description agent, reads the description of the tool, compares it to the query you've given it, and sees, will this tool help me answer this question? So here is the example question that I'm getting at. What was the high temperature in Nashville yesterday in Fahrenheit? And what is that number raised to the 0.23 power? If you sent this prompt to ChatGPT right now, it could not answer it. It does not know recent information like the weather yesterday, and it does not know how to do math, like raise something to the 0.23 power. But because we've given it DuckDuckGo search engine and LLM math tools, it should be able to answer this question now. So I'm going to initialize my agent, then I'm going to run this query, and it'll actually print out its entire chain of thought on our screen right here. So it says, oh, okay. So sometimes your agents run into, this is good that you're seeing this, sometimes agents go off in a weird loop and are not able to answer the question. So I'm going to just let it run. All right. Now I'm going to try to run it again. If it doesn't work, run it again. That's a good thing to do. What this agent was doing.
One thing I did notice, sorry, is that it actually called Google search, even though you didn't define that in your tool. In your previous
but
run.
here says the tool says DDG-search.
I think I saw
and
the
it's still
Google
called
search as
Google.
well. Yeah. Especially when you said is going that infinite loop or something.
Yeah, because right now it's going down a loop that's saying no DuckDuckGo search result was found. Is anyone else doing? Is your code doing this?
Maybe.
Because if you saw my output that was saved into the notebook, it worked when I wrote this. So unless LangChain updated last night, Jesse, you're muted.
Yeah, it did. It updated just recently.
Oh, I hate that.
It updated in the last hour.
In the last hour, yes.
Wonderful. Am I frozen?
No.
Oh, okay. To me, I look frozen.
Oh, your face is frozen.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I'm smiling. Okay, well, Link chain updated, and now this doesn't work for some reason.
So I guess one of the lessons is there can be, so there are, since it's open source, there are tons of tools that are sort of floated out there, right? So the ones that are in the documentation and are more broadly used are likely to be more stable. So know that if you're choosing a tool which is not listed in the documentation, it may or may not stick around. So so choose your tools wisely. And if you choose the tools that are most commonly discussed and are actually have made their way into the documentation, you're going to likely be safer. But this sort of goes to show, these are new tools, so be ready for problems, and be ready to switch tools if you need to.
Yeah, so I'm going to actually run a different thing. I see for some people it's working and other people it's not. I think I think the API call must have changed, and then link chain updated but didn't update the DuckDuckGo, or I don't know, who knows. So I'm actually going to change, instead of giving it the DuckDuckGo search, we're just going to show off the math. So just know that it should be able to look up on DuckDuckGo. There's also a Google search API that you can plug in. You do need the API key for that, but I'm going to go ahead and just load the LLM math tool and then initialize the agent again with just the math tool. And now I'm going to run what is 0.222 raised to the, oh, and it needs to be in quotes. I didn't get my quote. Raised to the 0.456 power. And now if I run this, it should be able to decide, so you can see can I calculate this? It says answer calculator, action input. It gives the input for the math that it needs to do, and then it gets that answer. So now it says, I know the final answer, and it outputs that for me. So this is how you're able to use a large language model to solve math equations. We even have a Wolfram Alpha tool that is much more powerful. And so I really encourage you to look at agents and tools. We're not going to, get into the weeds on these either, but kind of just an overview. So this was an extra breakout exercise that I had to come up with a new question to ask the model. I think maybe we shouldn't do this one since it's not exactly working with the tools we set up. But if you have time, later today, I encourage you to play around with this and maybe even get into the documentation yourself and see how you can fix my code. But for now, are there any questions on agents before we move on to indexes?
I guess the one question I have is that you have two questions in your prompt. Somehow the agent knows which tool to use to answer which question, right?
Yeah.
That's I guess how does it do it, right? That's
so how it does it, it's kind of so it takes in your prompt, it analyzes the prompt, and then compares the prompt to the descriptions of the tools that you gave it. So each tool comes with its own description, and then it will see, I'm assuming that it, compares the embeddings of those and sees which description more closely matches the query or the action that it decides it needs to do. And then it chooses the tool based on that. So that's just kind of my interpretation of it, but it's pretty neat that it's able to do that. And then if you read some of the papers and documentations about it, the different agents work in different ways as well. So it's really neat. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, this is a question I posted in the chat and I saw Umang had an answer in there, but I thought I'd throw it out to the group anyway. Does using agents, that's going to consume more API calls to OpenAI? I'm assuming, again, without getting too much under the hood, that if you use one agent and you query it with a specific query, that it's making multiple OpenAI calls to generate sort of that workflow and response. So I guess just thinking from like a budget standpoint or a cost standpoint, should you expect using agents to increase your API usage with OpenAI?
I don't have the exact answer on that just because I haven't dug into the documentation on it. Like Umang said, I'm assuming that it does result in extra API calls if it goes on a really long chain or loop, but I don't know that for a fact. I would have to look at the source code. That's, just another thing that I would have to look at the source code for.
And if you think about this, it's going to be taking, so it takes some tokens to figure out what it's going to be doing. Everything you see it generate is a token, right? Right. It could be that you're making a call out to something that's doing a ton of work that otherwise would be taken with the model. So maybe saving you some, but then let's say that the agent that you have or the tool that you have returns a lot of text back in for return to you. So, it's really a balancing act, and you almost have to monitor to see what it is. But the fact is, for many things, you're using a tool because you couldn't do it otherwise. But it may result in some savings. It may result in more, but the more verbose it is, the more it is generating for you. Yeah, the more tokens it's using.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's see. So yeah, here's a good question in the chat. Can we tell the agent exactly what tools to use for which parts of the prompt, or to use which tools in what order? I'm sure you can, engineer your prompt in that way. That's just something you're going to have to experiment with and say, hey, use this tool for this or this tool for this. See how it works for you. I think there's another tool that's called like Human as a tool, which I believe asks for your input on what its decisions are. And so then it says, I think I need to use this tool. Is that correct? I think that's how that works. I haven't looked into Human as a tool. It's pretty new. So that's another thing. A lot of these questions, you're just going to have to try it out. So, so that's on agents, and they're really powerful if you can get them to run. So look at some of the other tools. A lot of them do require extra API keys though, which is why I don't have a lot of examples for you today, because I didn't want all of us to fidget around with API keys any more than we already have. So the last component of LangChain that I'm going to go over is indexes. And I see it's 10:20 right now. Do we want to break? Go ahead and give, I guess, a red X if you're kind of tired and you need a break, or a green check if you want to continue on. And this will be the last component of LangChain. And then we're going to talk about AI-assisted programming. So I'm seeing a couple people, a couple people would like a break. So why don't we take a 5-minute break and be back at 10:25, and then we'll get into this last component called indexes, and then we'll talk about what's exciting, which is AI-assisted programming with LangChain. So I'll see you all back at, well, now 10:26. I'll see you back at 10:26. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back from our quick break. I hope you feel refreshed. Okay, so it is right at 10:26. I'm going to wait a couple seconds and then we'll go ahead and get started. Are there any questions now that you've had some time to think about what we've covered so far? Feel free to type questions in the chat or raise your hand. Yes, Kay.
Yeah, I've heard that LLMs can have difficulties with some basic math. How do we know if the question we are asking or the prompt we are doing is subject to any limitations, and if we are getting the wrong answer or something like that?
Well, LLMs are not doing math. They are writing an answer that sounds plausible. So if they've seen that math before, then they might be able to output it, but it's never going to be, you're never going to be certain about a math question that you send to an LLM. So that's kind of why we give it these tools up here in the previous exercise where we say use LLM math. So this is like a calculator that we're giving it. In that case, the answer, should be correct because it's a calculator that we have given it. But I would say in general, anything that you send to a large language model, you're going to have to take that with a grain of salt in saying this answer may be incorrect because it's a large language model and it's not, an expert in anything. And it's, a model. So your answers can change depending on how you ask a question, depending on how many times you ask a question. So there's no definitive way to know if it's wrong unless you just happen to know that it's wrong.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last component of LangChain that we'll talk about is indexes. And this is going to help us do some of those further applications of LangChain that we've been wanting to do, like accessing a database, connecting to documents, all of the exciting things that I've been getting questions about for the last several weeks, we'll finally learn how to do. So let's jump into indexes. So we've been sending prompts as inputs to our model so far, just like sentences, but we can also give our models documents for analysis. And you can do this, you could paste an entire document into your prompt, but that's pretty expensive in terms of tokens. So to solve this, instead of just sending an entire document as a prompt, we're going to use indexes. And an index is a more memory efficient way of storing these documents that allow LangChain to look up the relevant information and then only pass that relevant information to the model. So there's 4 main components of an index, and you can look at the guide that I've linked here. But the 4 main components are document loader, literally just loading your document or documents. The text splitter, which splits up the information into smaller pieces. So, maybe a couple of sentences, maybe a couple paragraphs, it depends, you can tune that. Vector store, which is storing your text as a vector representation using some sort of model embedding. And then a retriever, which is going to query over your vector store and then retrieve the relevant text, the text that's just relevant to the prompt that you've given it. So when you end up with a prompt, you ask a question over a document, and then the model will send back just the relevant parts of the document, or the index will send back the relevant parts of the document for that question, and then use that to answer you. So you're not sending the entire document as your context, which would quickly use up all of your tokens. So in this example, we're going to download a file just to your Colab. If you've never done this before, you may recognize this exclamation mark that shows a terminal command. And we're just going to run this. It's using wget, which is just going to download a file for you. This is the example file that LangChain uses on their website. It's just the State of the Union, I think from this year maybe, by President Biden. but they just use this as an example to answer questions on it. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first step is load documents. It's always your first step. You have the documents. LangChain has a bunch of different document loaders. So different document loaders for different types of documents. You have one for text files, PDFs, even Python files. Read the documentation if you want to see all of the different kinds of documents you can send it. It's very much like chains where people are just making these document loaders and making them available for you. You can make your own custom document loader and then use it for your own custom file or data that you have. In this example, though, we're just going to work with a text file. We're just going to use the text loader so you can get a feel for how we do this indexing. So in the very beginning of the notebook where we imported libraries, you'll see that I already imported that text loader with the line from langchain.document loaders import text loader. If you wanted to use PDF loader, you would import PDF loader, something like that. So if you go ahead and run this cell, it initializes your loader. So what this does, we call the loader that we want. So in this case, text loader for looking over text files. We're gonna put in the path to the file that we downloaded. If you ran this just as I had it, it should download /stateoftheunion.txt into your files over here. So if you want to see that, you can see now in my file system, I have stateoftheunion.txt. That's specific to Colab. So as long as you've downloaded that, you should be good. So now we've got a loader. We pass the loader our file. This is just for one file for now. And then this is the encoding for the text file. Usually it'll be UTF-8. You don't really need to worry about that. So now we're going to talk about a quick way to start this. We're not going to get into how it specifically works because LangChain has a wrapper that wraps around everything else for the indexer. And I actually have included the code that goes into how it exactly does all of that in more detail. But for now, let's just get started immediately. Let's use this vector store index creator. So this is a class that does exactly what it sounds like. It creates the index vector store for you. So it's combining the text splitter, the vector store, and the retriever all in one step. All you do is you send it your document loader that we just initialized up here, and it will return that index for you. So easy way to call it, you just say your index equals vector store index creator, and then you use this dot from loaders method and send it your loader. And you notice it says from loaders. So if you have multiple files, and there's different ways to do this, but in this case, if you have multiple files, you can just add onto this list, you know, loader 1, loader 2, stuff like that. We're not gonna do that right now. So load the loader or load the index, and it's created this index for us. So now if we want to look over this, we're not going to customize it just yet, but if we just want to use this as it is, we can use the query method to send a prompt to the model. So a little bit different, you know, we have different ways to query our models. You just have to kind of know for indexes, it's .query for this specific index. So I have a prompt. What did the president say about Ketanji Brown Jackson? And you have index.query prompt. And so now it's going to look over the State of the Union, find the name Ketanji Brown Jackson and what the president said about this person, and then put out this summary right here. So pretty interesting. It uses the index to find the relevant information, and then that relevant information it uses to find the answer to your question. So you can kind of mess around with this and put, so another one that I like to do is to tell it to like summarize. So what you can do is you can say, let's say prompt equals, you know, summarize this speech in 5 sentences. And then let's see what it does here. And so it's going to take, and there's different chains. I mean, we can really customize this as much as you want. But if I say this, since I'm doing it live, let's hope it works. Here we go. So in this speech, the speaker discusses the strength of the US and the courage of Ukrainian people in the face of adversity, all of this stuff. So pretty neat. Now you're able to query over documents, which is, I think, a lot of what people have been wanting to do in this workshop so far. So if we want to get into exactly how it does this, this is where the cells are hidden. So that's what we had a question about earlier. So if you unfold this, you can see all of the steps that go into just this simple vector store index creator. And this will allow you to really customize it to your needs. So you have the loader, text splitter. I'm not going to talk about all this. I'm just showing you so you can look over it. So we have a text splitter. You have vector stores, embeddings, creating the embeddings using a database. I mean, all of this. And we're going to get into more detail with that later this week. But that is what this function really wraps up, is this all of these steps. And then finally creating a chain to use the index. So you can do that if you want, or you could just use vector store index creator. And we'll experiment with a bunch of different things this week. So that is loading documents. Do we have questions about loading documents? Yes, Chris.
Yeah, so it looks like it's still using OpenAI's API behind the scenes as the language model to get this answer. So what exactly is it sending over to OpenAI as the context, if not the full speech?
Yeah, so it's using, first of all, it's using OpenAI because we have set that. In this notebook, we're using OpenAI because I have that API key and most of us also have that API key. What it's sending to OpenAI is it's sending your prompt, and then it's sending the section of, I think it's sending the section that it finds relevant to your prompt. And that would be something I would have to really look into to give you an exact answer on, but it's sending your prompt and then it's sending the section of the document that's relevant to your prompt, I believe. And someone correct me if I'm wrong.
And I guess when you're asking it to summarize it though, it's the whole speech. So is it sending everything?
We'd have to look at the code, but that is a really good point. I was hoping someone would bring this up. So what I think it's doing is taking sections of major sections of it, or maybe it's just sending the entire thing. I don't really know. But there's also other chains for summarization that we could look at. So there's a couple of different ways it could be doing it.
Got it.
Any other questions?
Sorry, one more question here. If we are dealing with documents that are highly sensitive and cannot be sent over the wire to anything else, what is the suggestion on a model to use or something?
Yeah, so things, oh yeah, Jesse, go ahead.
I was going to say, in those cases, you may very want to, if you need things to stay within a firewall, is to run a local model. So, the llama-based models have progressed very nicely. There's the red pajama model, which is going to be completing training on the larger models this summer. Those can be run locally, and you can access those from LangChain as well. So that's probably what you want to do there, because because absolutely these, the store is happening off-site, the inferencing is happening off-site. So you'd want to have an entirely local for both this document storage and also for the local inferencing. You'd have to have everything on-prem if you have sensitive documents.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's just a quick overview of creating the index. And with that, we have covered all of the components of LangChain. So if your brain feels tired, that's okay. We've done a quick overview of LangChain, and then tomorrow and Friday, we're going to get into exactly how to customize it, how to use it for your purposes. But wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to read all of this documentation, if we didn't have to spend hours on understanding exactly what the code does under the hood, if we could just ask ChatGPT to explain LangChain to us? There is one problem with this, though, is ChatGPT does not know about LangChain because LangChain is new. LangChain is being worked on right now. As you saw, it just broke my code. LangChain is constantly being updated, and ChatGPT only knows about, up until it was trained, which is September 2021 for GPT-3, I think. And so it's not going to know about LangChain. You can't ask it about this and say, write Python code to do this. It may give you Python code. It will not be correct Python code because it's just guessing. So wouldn't it be really great if we were able to have some sort of model that could answer questions about LangChain? So could we use LangChain to solve this problem? Could we use LangChain to create a bot that answers questions about LangChain? What would be a workflow that could accomplish this? Go ahead, let's brainstorm together. What could we do to accomplish this using LangChain, using everything we've talked about today? Give me all of your ideas, put them in chat, yell at me. What do you think we could do to make this? Use chatbot chain. I'm seeing some good answers. Yes, put all the LangChain docs, index the LangChain docs, load the LangChain docs. You guys are geniuses. Yes, so we want to, what if we could put all of the LangChain documentation into a LangChain model and then ask it questions about this? And if you click reveal answer, I have this answer right here. So 1, use LangChain to create an index of LangChain documentation. And then 2, implement a question answer chain to ask questions about that documentation. And we already did this. So Umang and I put together a tool for you to ask questions, to ask it to write LangChain Python code for you. And then LangChain did the same thing at the same time. So we have 2 tools for you to use. You guys have 2 tools. One that Umang and I put together on, it's on a Hugging Face space, and then another that LangChain actually has on their documentation page. It's just a little bit hidden. So I introduced to you LangChain Assistant. So we at the DSI have created this bot to answer questions. You can try it out on this link here. It should take you to Hugging Face, and unless the newest update to LangChain broke this code too, you just paste in your OpenAPI key, OpenAI API key. I keep getting all of those letters mixed up. You submit it, and then once you submit it, you'll be able to put in a prompt. So experiment around with that. LangChain also has one that they made, and so now it's kind of a competition. But I'd rather them have one that work because I don't want to have to keep up with this tool that we made. But actually, so if you see my screen here, you're going to go to langchain.com or python.langchain.com. And then if you click on this little parrot icon, I don't know if you can see that with the screen share.
Yeah.
It pops up with a little thing. It says, "Hi, how can I help you?" Let's see. Right, Python code that uses LangChain to start a chatbot. Let's see if those work. And you can prompt engineer again and ask it for different things. But oh my goodness. Look at this. It's writing our code for us. And how does it do this? It did it using LangChain. So you can copy this code and run it, see if it runs. Pretty useful. And then it'll even explain it. And then my favorite part is it puts its sources down at the bottom so you can read further. So if you just want to ask a question like, how does this function work? You can ask that. So for the next exercise that I want to do to wrap up is I want you to play around with this tool. We're talking about AI assisted coding, and why not use a tool like this instead of having to learn a whole new Python library? Use a tool like this to kind of help you inform what exactly you need from this tool and how it works. So we're going to go into breakout rooms, and I want you to try out either the one that Umang and I created on Hugging Face or LangChain's own version on their website, and come up with some prompts to give it. Ask it some questions, how does it work? Are there prompts that it works really well for? Are there prompts it doesn't work at all for? Try to run the code it gives you. And I did put this note here. It works best when it says, when you put write Python code that uses LangChain to do something. That's kind of what I found it works best with, but maybe try around some different ones. So go ahead, go into your breakout rooms, compare these tools, or just use 1 or 2 of them, and then let's come back and discuss how they did.
Very exciting. We'll likely have to keep up with our version since LangChain is paying for, as Ananth pointed out, is paying for all the inferencing. So I imagine at some point they may pull the plug on that, or maybe have you put in an API key or something along those lines. Plus, I'm betting that they're using 3.5. So if you want to use 4.
Yeah, probably.
Or are you talking about for the like LangChain documentation question answering?
Yeah.
They're not using ChatGPT for that. They're using a company called Mendable.
Mendable, that's right. Okay. Do you know
Yeah.
what Mendable is using?
No. I
Okay.
think they have proprietary stuff going on there.
Okay.
But yeah, they probably will make us pay for that at some point because they are paying for Mendable.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to compare the code between Mendable and GPT-4. And just to remind you, I will at 11, I'll be heading out to a meeting.
All right, hello, as people are coming back in. Kat has joined us. Hello, everyone. Okay, I think all of us are back now. So, okay, tell me, what model did you use? I mean, what bot did you use? How did it work? Did it produce good code? Did it produce bad code? What were your observations here? Isaac.
So our group, we tried to, so we used the chatbot on Langching's website, and we tried to ask it, how do we write Python code that lets us build a chatbot that recommends us clothes to wear based on the current weather? And the first time I asked it, it gave me like some suggestion code, and I was like, okay, cool. And then some of the group members joined a little later, and I wanted to rerun it to show them what I did. But when I reran it, it gave me a completely different output. That was just like, it looked like a dictionary, like with a random chat log between an AI and a system. And it was kind of confusing. And then every time we tried to redo it, it didn't give us good code. And then someone got code, but it was just like using a library that didn't exist with a search function that didn't exist. So it started like hallucinating code. And so we tried simplifying it, but it kept like not working. So I think we were trying to give it maybe too complex problems, and it wasn't working for us.
Yeah, interesting. So I have also noticed that it tends to work better with simpler problems. That's funny that it was hallucinating. Interesting. Okay, so it's definitely a tool that's a work in progress. What about other people? What other experiences did people have with either this model or the one on Hugging Face?
So I tried using the same, and not the Hugging Face one, but the Langchain one, and to find like the top 10 lists, I told it to search using DuckDuckGo for all the top 10 lists on David Letterman's top 10 lists, and to like find the ones that referred to animals. And I mean, it produced code. At first, I asked a slightly different question, and it couldn't produce the code. But then I changed it a little bit, and then it was able to write the code, but the code doesn't run. But I'm not sure. It looks like it's DuckDuckGo is the problem. Based on my error message. But I thought that was interesting that it was able to generate the code. It's not as exciting of an example as the previous one. But.
Yeah, and it does seem DuckDuckGo is giving us problems. One other problem is that even though LangChain updated, the documentation may not have updated. So this is it's only as good as the documentation, and the documentation lacks sometimes. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Jesse Bloker.
So I had I actually just did this. I was doing something else, but I had an idea. I asked it to generate, because this is something I'd like to do. I asked it to write Python code that uses LangChain to index a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet and to query the different sheets. And I think it hallucinated code. Like it said, it gave me this. Let me see if I'll put it in the chat. It gave me this object, which I don't think exists, and then told me how to use it.
Wow,
I don't think it can do Excel. Like I was searching through the documentation manually, and I found it can do PowerPoint and it can do Word, but it can't do Excel. And so I was like, maybe I just can't find it, but I'm pretty sure it just manufactured this code that doesn't exist.
That is so interesting. I am confused by that because you can set LangChain, you can set parameters for it to reduce hallucinations, and for it to only use the documentation it has available to it to answer the questions. So I'm fascinated that they have it able to hallucinate and make up code. That's kind of funny. Just curious if anyone tried out the one tool on the Hugging Face space or not. And also Raymond, I see you also had some observations to share as well.
Yes, I actually tried to get it to write a self-updating agent for the documentation just to see what it would output. And it was interesting because it didn't hallucinate. It gave a really good conceptual answer that boiled down to, hey, I need to learn more LangChain. but it also did qualify different types of considerations, like just some considerations for the agent, so a couple of ideas for how I would do the scheduling, whether it would be user pool or if it would be time interval, things like that. I thought about that when it updated earlier in today's session.
Yeah, that's a really good use for it as well. And so a lot of these I'm seeing is it's kind of more complex questions where maybe the documentation is sparse is where the tool kind of fails. But I think for more simpler things, if you ask it simpler questions like write Python code that uses LangChain to generate a prompt template or something like that, like something really basic that maybe you don't feel like looking up yourself, it seems like it could be used for. Yeah, it seems like people are getting errors on Hugging Face. Like we said, LangChain updated like this morning or something, so it probably broke our code, which is unfortunate, but it's all of this is a work in progress. So I see we're 2 minutes past the hour right now, and thank you so much for sharing what you've discovered today. I hope that this overview of LangChain was useful for you. Feel free to continue to use that Colab notebook that we've been working in today and experiment around with it, and then see how LangChain can work for you. And then later this week, we'll be talking about more specific applications of LangChain, how to tweak the functions that we've been talking about to get it to do exactly what you want. So thank you so much for today. I hope you have a great rest of today, and we'll see you tomorrow. And please do stick around for office hours until noon. Umang and I will be here to answer your questions.
And Janet, yes, yesterday's session was recorded, and I will go ahead and put a link in there real quickly. I'm going to have to hop off and won't be able to join you for office hours, but I'll put this in there. You can find it on our AI summer playlist page. So
Thank you.
And Jack, I believe the GitHub repository is public, so as long as we keep that up, then you will have access to it. So unless we have to get rid of it for some reason, which I don't anticipate we will, you should have access to it. But if you want to be safe, you can go ahead and clone it to your own machine, and then you'll have it, or download it. Yes, William.
Yeah, just a quick question about in the Hugging Face thing, like when I enter my API key, and then I hit submit, and then when I go to the coding assistant, it has like a blank where it says open API key. So does that mean that it didn't accept it, or do I need to click the get API key?
Click the get API key. That's just kind of like a sanity check.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. So it's like bringing it over from the other. Oh, I see. Okay, I should have tried that. Okay. And then I don't know if my key is, I think, like, does my key support both 3.5 and 4, or how do I know that?
So in order to have access to GPT-4 through the API, you need to sign up for the waitlist for that, and I can put a link to that. But if you haven't done that, you don't have access to 4.
Got it. Yeah. So I don't. So it's just a 3.5. That's what I thought. I just okay. And then you guys keep referring to like older versions of the models. Like, are these the only 2 models that are available through the OpenAI API?
You do. Go ahead, Miranda.
Oh. Yeah, so you can set it so when you have, like, if you're just talking about, you mean in LangChain where you select your model?
Oh, I guess it's I guess through your tool you'd only choose those 2. Is that right? 3.5 and 4. I see. But the others are, you could potentially use the other ones, I guess.
Well, so this tool is kind of like we just made a ChatGPT for LangChain. So there's not really anything you can customize about it because it's a tool that we wrote. And the same with the one on the LangChain website. You can't like do anything to it unless you download it to your own machine and write code on that. But as far as using LangChain, like if you are writing your own thing with LangChain, you can choose whichever model you want as long as it's available on LangChain. And so for OpenAI, they have a couple different versions.
I see. So then the key that I've got would support anything up to 3.5 potentially.
Right.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I had a kind of a general question. One of the things that I'm looking into is the idea of analyzing code. And I saw actually on the LangChain site on their documentation under use cases, they did have a code understanding section. And I mean, it talked about the indexing and the retriever and all kind of the stuff you went over where it talked about how it's doing that. It seems like it'd be really helpful. I guess one of the things that I'm looking at is specifically analyzing diffs. So changes in the code. And I guess it's more of a general idea. Would you think that it would make sense to say, to take a copy of the file at one point and then at the other point, pass both of those in, say, analyze this one, and then compare the analysis? Or do you think actually, whether it's like a Git diff or Python has their own diff libraries that can be used as well, do you think it would be better to say, okay, take that diff and try and analyze that? Because I don't know if I'm not exactly sure what that diff would look like, and if anything would be like, if the indexing of that, if it could say, okay, well, this section was deleted, is it going to be able to know that and index that and say, okay, that's an important thing, I need to know that as well, not just new stuff being added?
It's an interesting question. And, you know, I think the answer is always try it out and see which one works better. Yeah, I don't really know. It really depends on how it's going to, if it understands what that diff like means, which I don't know. I don't know if it would. Maybe they have a specific tool for that or a specific document loader. They do have like a Python loader for Python files. And so I'm thinking if you analyze each Python file, it should be able to tell you, like, maybe tell you what one does and what the other one does, but that would have to be like two separate things, I think.
Yes.
But yeah, try it out. See, let us know if it is able to understand like the differences between the two.
Could you do that where you're doing the Python loader and say, okay, analyze this file, and then actually pass both the analyses in and say, here, compare these two analyses and tell me the difference and what's going on with that? Would that, since the analysis is going to be, it's not going to be necessarily code-based, it's going to be language, it's going to be English. And so I figure it should be able to understand that and hopefully recognize what's important and what's not in regular language. So
yeah, the only caveat I would say with that is it adds another layer of dependency, right? Because you're depending on the answer that it produces to describe the code being good enough for it to analyze that compared to another description. And depending on the different number of times you run that, you might get vastly different answers. So, I mean, maybe you could just run that a couple times and see what it does. It's an interesting problem for sure.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Chris.
Yeah, one question I have is, I guess going back to my earlier question about sensitive data and analyzing it. And I think in my case, I have a large amount of very sensitive data in Google Cloud SQL and Google BigQuery, all within the Google Cloud, but I don't want to share any of the data itself with any external services outside the firewall. So how do I think the Llama model was mentioned, but I'm curious if there is any legit open source models that I can use legally, because my understanding with Llama is that it was leaked. So it may not, so I don't know if it's, and Red Pajama, it sounds like it's not yet ready for prime time. So I'm curious if there is any specifics on legally legal options.
So like now Llama can only be from Facebook servers, and you'll be able to see that it's no longer leaked. They've dove right into publishing it.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, I think you can use Llama. But yeah, I mean, you could Llama or some other ones. Umang, if you can think of some other ones like Alpaca or something, you can download to your computer and use them. And then yeah, the document store, you would just have to see what database you want to use and set up some local one. So I think Chroma DB is one that runs locally, so that you're not sending it out. But yeah, it is definitely something you have to think about is the model you use, you're sending it your data for sure. But there are ways to do it all locally. You just need a lot of computer to do that sometimes.
Got it.
Any other questions for us? We'll just be hanging out.
Can I ask just a question about like what I got from when I tried to I'm trying to get this code to run. I don't know if it's something I'm doing wrong maybe or whatever, but
Sure.
Can I share my screen maybe?
Yeah, you should be able to.
So it's like this is the code that it gave me when I ran it with your Hugging Face thing. And I can show you what it looks like. Like this is the code. So I asked it to, oh, it doesn't show me when I asked it. Oh yeah, so I asked it to write code that would find the top 10 lists on the internet and print out the items that refer to animals in that list. But like, well, first off, is this like a good use of LangChain, or is this, maybe this is too simple and I should just like ask that directly? I was trying to come up with like a good thing to send LangChain. And
yeah, I mean, it's really, just whatever you want to ask it. I think it does the best with like simpler things. Okay. So, or even if you break up if you have a complex problem, maybe breaking it up, but it looks good to me. And if you're having, oh, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Well, you mentioned something about Google. I need an API or something with Google, so that may be what the issue is. But it seemed like it was giving an error when it tried to import something with Google, and so that's like the error it looks like it's giving here.
That's
Yeah. Go ahead,
updated.
Umang.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's just because the documentation's been updated since, and you're running a new version of LangChain. So I don't think it's called Google Search Docs anymore.
Yeah, so you may be able to, this is, part of the iterative process where maybe you can go to the LangChain website and Control F Google Docs or whatever. Something like that. It's definitely an iterative process. It's not going to give you the end all be all of your code.
Well, okay. Yeah, it's so great. I love this collab thing. It's just like so much easier than using like trying to configure an IDE and getting running and all this stuff. I'm so happy that we're using this.
Yay,
So, okay,
I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, and this is like a similar code that I got from, at that point I asked to DuckDuckGo, but I think it's the same problem basically. It's like
Yeah, there's problems with DuckDuckGo. Also, that's not how you, like from langchain.llms, that doesn't make sense to import DuckDuckGo from LLMs. I think it's a documentation thing. The documentation for DuckDuckGo specifically is, you can look at it. It's this small. And so it's probably not going to be able to answer questions about DuckDuckGo. Like it took me forever to set up DuckDuckGo. So asking questions about like the smaller things that it doesn't have a ton of documentation on, not great.
Well, I guess I was wondering how they were going to figure out whether the things were animals or not. Like, I don't, like, is it actually going to be smart enough to understand like what animals, like, I don't know. Like when I say animals, like, is it going to think dog, cats? Is it going to think lions, tigers, bears? Like, is it just going to look for the word animal? Like, I don't know. Anyway, but I guess I'll try to get this.
Yeah. It's accessing the large language model. So kind of like if you ask ChatGPT to do it, kind of along the same lines.
Okay, so it should be able to figure it out.
Yeah, hopefully, we'll see.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll keep working on it.
Yeah.
All right. I really like the we had used like the Hugging Face. It was like a week ago, or was it weeks ago? You had showed us, or someone had showed us how to use a tool to like create pictures based on your text, and then I think I ran out of my turns, to make pictures with my with that like license. So then someone had sent, I think Miranda, maybe you sent it to me. It was a way to use Hugging Face to do it like for free, basically, to like create little logos. And, is there a way that I could do that, like tie that in here also? Like I can make that like I guess I could probably write code that would call that part and have it like create a picture at the end for what I returned.
It really just depends on if LangChain has implemented that into its library. I'm not aware of it having, I'm assuming you're talking about like Stable Diffusion. And the image generators. I don't think LangChain has incorporated that yet, but you might be able to like piecemeal your own thing together using parts of LangChain, but it's not officially supported.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Well, I guess there are no questions. Should we keep this open until 12 or should we just?
I think we can head out.
Okay, sounds good. I'll get to
Alright.
work on the prompt template thing. Thanks for sending over the notebook.
Yep, totally. I am just finishing up vector stores, and then the last thing I'm gonna do is retrievers and chains. Oh, I forgot chains is the whole thing. But then if you want to add at the very end a section for agents, I guess just go over it briefly. And prompts, I think we've again like pretty much looked at everything about prompts. The only thing that I think might be useful based off of questions that we're getting is the output parsers. Because in my explanations, I go over the chat prompt templates. You've already pretty much explored the basic prompt templates. There's example selectors, which I haven't taken a look at, but if you think that's worth keeping, you can talk about that. But definitely output parsers, and then whatever you want to do in agents. I think I should be able to get through everything tomorrow.
Okay.
So not entirely sure what we're doing on Friday.
Yeah, we covered a lot more than I thought we'd be able to get through today. So
Yeah, so we can take a call on that after tomorrow and see what we want to do. Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right, see you.
Bye.
Great job today.
Thank you.